Get your fucking machines off my property before I make you. I was standing in knee-high switchgrass at 6:47 a.m., still in my boxers and work boots, screaming at a construction foreman who looked about as concerned as a DMV clerk on lunch break. Behind him, a John Deere 244J loader sat idling, its bucket already full of Oregon soil that belonged to me, had belonged to my family since 1972. "Sir, we have authorization from Sunset Ridge Estates HOA. I don't give a damn what you have." I stepped closer, close enough to smell his coffee breath. "This is private property." "My property. And you've got exactly 60 seconds to get that yellow piece of shit back across the line before I call every law enforcement agency in Deschutes County." The foreman name tag said Miguel didn't flinch. Just pulled a laminated document from his clipboard. "Mr. Castellano, this area has been designated for community enhancement under..." Community enhancement? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean a goddamn dog park? On land my grandfather bled for?" Miguel's radio crackled. A woman's voice, sharp and precise. "Miguel? Status?" He keyed the mic, without breaking eye contact. "Resident is non-compliant." "Then call the sheriff. We have every legal right to be there." I snatched the radio out of his hand so fast he stumbled backward. "Linda? Linda Frazier? This is Anthony Castellano. You want to explain to me why you're bulldozing my property at dawn like the goddamn Gestapo?" Static. "Then, Mr. Castellano, this isn't personal. The community voted. The boundaries were reviewed. If you have concerns, there's a proper appeals process." "Appeals process? Appeals process?" I was shouting now. Didn't care who heard. "I've got the deed right here, signed and notarized in 1972. You want to see it? Or are you too busy playing SimCity with other people's land?" More static. Then her voice went cold. "Miguel, proceed with site preparation. Mr. Castellano, you're welcome to contact your attorney." I threw the radio into the dirt. Miguel looked at me, almost apologetic. "Sir, I'm just doing my job." "Then do it somewhere else." I pulled out my phone, already dialing, because in about 5 minutes, this is going to be a crime scene. Behind me, the sun was just starting to crack the horizon over the Cascade foothills, painting everything in that particular shade of Oregon gold that usually makes mornings worth living. But all I could see was red. Red like the surveyor's tape, wrapped around my fence posts. Red like the anger that had been building for 3 months. Red like the blood I was about to draw if these HOA vultures thought they could take what wasn't theirs. Some people say land is just dirt and grass. Those people have never fought for it. Let me show you how a neighborhood becomes a war zone. I own 22 acres outside Bend, Oregon, prime high desert country where the juniper trees grow twisted and defiant, where the air smells like sage after rain, and where you can still see stars so bright they look fake. The property sits at the eastern edge of what used to be open range, back when cattle outnumbered people, and the only HOA anyone talked about was the Cattlemen's Association. My grandfather, Dominic Castellano, bought this land in 1972 with money he'd saved working timber up in Sisters, paid cash. The deed is framed in my living room, yellowed paper with his signature bold and certain. He built the original cabin himself, same cabin I rebuilt after the fire in '09. Keeping the foundation and the stone fireplace because some things you don't replace. I'm a wildland firefighter. Seasonal work, brutal hours, the kind of job that teaches you what matters when everything's burning. I spend summers in California and Idaho fighting fires that make national news. Winters I come home, fix what breaks, and appreciate the silence. The land isn't fancy. I've got the main cabin, a steel barn for equipment, a chicken coop that's more rust than wire, and 22 acres of mixed terrain meadowgrass up front, rocky hillside in back, a seasonal creek that runs December through March. Most importantly, I've got the East Meadow, 12 acres of native bunchgrass and wildflowers that I've let go deliberately wild. Mule deer bed down there, Red-tailed hawks nest in the ponderosas along the northern edge. Every spring, the meadow erupts in lupine and Indian paintbrush so thick it looks like someone spilled a paint store. It's not unused land. It's living land. There's a difference. The trouble started when Sunset Ridge Estates broke ground 2 years ago. Suddenly, my eastern boundary, which had been empty, scrubland, and Bureau of Land Management property, became a subdivision. Cookie-cutter houses with vinyl siding and landscaping that required sprinklers in the high desert. The kind of neighborhood where every mailbox matches and the HOA sends you passive-aggressive notices if your garage door stays open past 7 p.m. At first, it was just awkward encounters. New neighbors waving from their side of the fence, asking if I'd ever consider selling, making jokes about all that space going to waste. I smiled, waved back, said no thanks. Then came the meetings. Linda Frazier, HOA president, showed up at my door one Saturday morning in November 2023. Late 50s, blonde highlights that cost more than my truck payment, wearing Lululemon leggings and a fleece vest with the Sunset Ridge logo embroidered on the chest. She had that smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that says, "I'm being friendly because I haven't started being mean yet." Mr. Castellano, I'm Linda Frazier from Sunset Ridge. Do you have a moment? I was in the middle of splitting firewood. Sweat-soaked shirt, splinters in my gloves, probably smelled like a lumberjack. Sure, what's up? She pulled out, I'm not kidding, a binder. Color-coded tabs, laminated pages, the works. I wanted to discuss an exciting opportunity for community integration. Community integration? Yes. Her smile widened. We're proposing a shared recreation space, a community park where Sunset Ridge residents and, well, you, could enjoy outdoor amenities together. A place for families, for dogs, for neighborhood cohesion. I wiped my forehead with my sleeve. You want to build a park? Not just any park, a premier neighborhood gathering space. We're talking playground equipment, walking trails, maybe even a small amphitheater for summer concerts. It would really enhance property values for everyone. That sounds great. Where are you planning to build it? She flipped to a page in her binder. A map! My map! With a big red circle drawn around the east meadow. Here, she tapped it with a manicured nail. This unutilized section adjacent to our development, it's perfect flat, accessible, and honestly, it's just sitting there. I stared at the map, then at her. That's my land. Well, yes, technically, but the community is prepared to offer compensation. No, her smile flickered. Perhaps you didn't see the proposal details. I saw them. The answer is no. That meadow isn't for sale, isn't for lease, isn't for anything except being left alone. I'm not interested. Mr. Castellano, I understand you value your privacy, but this is about something bigger. Community, connection, quality of life for families. Not my families, not my problem. And not my responsibility to sacrifice my land so your residents have somewhere to walk their designer dogs. The smile died completely. I see. Well, there is a formal process if you change your mind. We'd be willing to discuss easement agreements, shared usage terms. Linda, I set down my axe. I'm going to say this once, clearly, so there's no confusion. This land is mine. All 22 acres. The meadow, the hillside, the creek bed, everything. It's not for sale. It's not for share. And it sure as hell isn't going to become a dog park because your HOA held a vote I wasn't invited to. She closed her binder with a snap. That's unfortunate. I was hoping we could be neighborly about this. Being neighborly means respecting boundaries, including property boundaries. She walked back to her white Lexus RX because, of course, that's what she drove, and I thought maybe that was the end of it. I was wrong. I was so wrong. 3 weeks later, the notices started. First one appeared on my gate. Official Sunset Ridge HOA letterhead, printed on cardstock, zip-tied to the chain like a ransom note. Notice of boundary review. Dear property owner, the Sunset Ridge Estates HOA Board has initiated a comprehensive boundary review of properties adjacent to our development. Preliminary surveys suggest potential discrepancies in recorded property lines versus actual land use. A licensed surveyor will be conducting measurements beginning December 4th. Your cooperation is appreciated. Questions? Contact Linda Frazier, HOA president. I read it twice, then called the county assessor's office. Yeah, Anthony Castellano, parcel number 181132BD00400. Someone's claiming there's a boundary discrepancy. Can you confirm what you have on file? The clerk took 15 minutes. When she came back, her voice was firm. Mr. Castellano, your property is clearly demarcated. Deed recorded in 1972, last survey completed in 2008 during your rebuild permit process. No discrepancies, no disputes, no issues. Someone wants to challenge it, then they'll need to file a formal petition with evidence. Can't just show up with a tape measure and declare things ambiguous. I thanked her and hung up. Then I printed out copies of my deed, the 2008 survey, and my grandfather's original purchase documents. I put them in a waterproof folder and locked them in the fireproof safe bolted to my bedroom closet. Then I waited. The surveyor showed up on December 4th, right on schedule. Young guy, mid-20s, driving a Toyota with a survey rig in the back. He walked the fence line with a clipboard and a laser rangefinder, taking measurements, making notes. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand. When he finished, I walked down to meet him. Find anything interesting? He looked uncomfortable. Just doing my job, sir. Who hired you? Sunset Ridge HOA. Did they tell you what they're looking for? He glanced at his truck. They asked me to verify the eastern boundary. Said there might be. Ambiguity. There's no ambiguity. The fence line follows the recorded plat exactly. I've got documentation going back 50 years. Yeah, I saw that in the county records. Look, between you and me, he lowered his voice. The measurements are clean. Your boundary is exactly where it should be. But they're paying me to write a report. And sometimes clients hear what they want to hear, regardless of what the data says. You going to tell them the truth? I'm going to tell them what I measured. What they do with it is up to them. He drove away. I never saw his report, but I can guess what it said. 2 weeks later, a new notice appeared, this time hand-delivered by Linda herself, who knocked on my door at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. Mr. Castellano, I wanted to personally inform you that the HOA board has voted to proceed with the park development project. We've identified the optimal location and secured the necessary permits. I leaned against the doorframe. Permits for what? For the community recreation space. We've worked with the county planning department to... Linda, stop. You can't get permits to build on land you don't own. She smiled that smile again. The county planning department agrees that the boundary in question falls within acceptable use parameters for community enhancement, pending resolution of ownership clarification. Ownership clarification? There's nothing to clarify. I own it. End of story. Mr. Castellano, you're making this more difficult than it needs to be. The community has spoken. The board has voted. The county is supportive. You're one person standing in the way of progress that benefits dozens of families. Good. I like those odds. Her jaw tightened. There's a planning commission meeting next Tuesday. 7 p.m. I strongly suggest you attend. I'll be there. She walked away. This time, she didn't drive off immediately. Just sat in her Lexus, typing on her phone, occasionally glancing up at my cabin like she was cataloging weaknesses. That's when I knew this wasn't about a park. This was about power. About a woman who'd built a little kingdom in a subdivision and couldn't stand the sight of land she didn't control. I went inside, pulled out my laptop, and started researching HOA law, adverse possession, and boundary disputes. If Linda wanted a fight, I'd give her one. But first, I needed to understand the battlefield. The Planning Commission meeting was held in the Deschutes County Administrative Building, a squat brick structure that smelled like government stale coffee, copy toner, and bureaucratic apathy. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing the cleanest flannel I owned and carrying a folder thick with documents. The room was packed. 30, maybe 40 people from Sunset Ridge, all wearing matching t-shirts that said Community First in cheerful green letters. Linda sat in the front row, flanked by 2 other board members I didn't recognize. When I walked in, every head turned. The silence was thick enough to choke on. I found a seat in the back, set down my folder, and waited. The Planning Commission consisted of 5 people, 3 county officials, and 2 citizen representatives. They looked bored before the meeting even started. The chair, a gray-haired man named Douglas Webb, called the meeting to order. Item 7 on tonight's agenda: Sunset Ridge Estates Community Park Proposal. Linda Frazier, you have the floor. Linda stood, clicked open a laptop, and a PowerPoint appeared on the screen. Professional graphics, drone footage, 3D renderings of a park with playground equipment, picnic pavilions, and walking trails. It looked like something from a resort brochure. Members of the commission, she began, voice smooth and practiced, what you're seeing is the future of community wellness in Deschutes County. A space where families can gather, where children can play, where neighbors can connect. This isn't just a park, it's an investment in quality of life. She clicked through slides showing smiling families, kids on swings, people walking dogs. The proposed site is currently unused grassland adjacent to our development. No structures, no active use. Just open space that could serve hundreds of residents. One of the commissioners, a woman in her 40s, raised her hand. Miss Frazier, what's the ownership status of this land? Linda's smile didn't waver. That's currently under review. There are some historical boundary ambiguities that we're working to clarify. However, we believe the land in question falls within reasonable interpretation of community-adjacent property suitable for public use enhancement. I stood up. That's a lie. Every head turned again. Douglas Webb frowned. Sir, you'll have a chance to speak during public comment. That land is mine, privately owned, clearly deeded. There's no ambiguity, no boundary dispute, and no legal basis for anyone to build anything on it without my permission. Linda turned to face me, still smiling. Mr. Castellano, as I've explained, the board is working through proper channels. You're working through bullshit channels. You can't vote to take someone's land just because you want it. Webb banged his gavel. Mr. Castellano, please sit down. You'll have your turn. I sat, but my heart was hammering. The rest of Linda's presentation was a masterclass in spin, talking about community benefit, tax revenue enhancement, partnership with local businesses. She made it sound like I was single-handedly preventing economic prosperity. When she finished, Webb asked for public comment. Hands shot up. One by one, Sunset Ridge residents stood and testified about how much they needed this park, how their children deserved outdoor space, how it would reduce crime. What crime? How it would bring the community together. One woman, maybe 35, with a toddler on her hip, actually started crying. My daughter has nowhere to play. We moved here for the community, but there's nothing for families. Please, don't let one person's selfishness ruin this for everyone. I wanted to scream. Instead, I waited. Finally, Webb called my name. Mr. Castellano, you have 3 minutes. I stood, walked to the front, and opened my folder. I'm not going to waste your time with emotional appeals. I'm going to show you facts. I held up the deed. This is the recorded deed for parcel 181132BD00400, purchased by Dominic Castellano in 1972. It clearly defines 22 acres, including the meadow that Sunset Ridge wants to develop. I laid it on the table, then pulled out the 2008 survey. This is a licensed survey completed during my rebuild permit process. It confirms the boundary is exactly where I say it is. Next came a printed map from the county assessor's website. This is current county records showing the same boundary. No discrepancies. No ambiguities, no disputes. I looked at Linda. She wasn't smiling anymore. Miss Frazier claims there's a boundary review in progress. That's true. She hired a surveyor to try to find something wrong, but the surveyor's measurements confirmed what I already knew: my property line is exactly where it's always been. I turned back to the commission. This isn't about community benefit. This is about a homeowners association trying to appropriate private property because they don't like the way it looks. And if you approve permits for construction on land I own, I will sue every person in this room. Webb cleared his throat. Mr. Castellano, we appreciate your... I'm not done. I pulled out one more document. This is Oregon Revised Statute 215.213, which prohibits local governments from taking or facilitating the taking of private property without due process and just compensation. If you issue permits for Sunset Ridge to build on my land, you're violating state law, and I will make sure everyone knows it. Silence. Webb glanced at the other commissioners. We'll need to review the boundary documentation before making any determination. This item is tabled pending legal review. Linda shot to her feet. Mr. Webb, the community has been very clear. The item is tabled, Miss Fraser. We'll reconvene once county legal has weighed in. I gathered my documents and walked out. Behind me, I could hear furious whispers, angry muttering, the sound of a mob realizing they weren't going to get what they wanted. Outside, the cold December air hit my face like a blessing. I stood there for a moment, breathing, trying to calm the adrenaline still flooding my system. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You just made a lot of enemies, Mr. Castellano. Hope it was worth it. I deleted the message and drove home. 3 days later, the construction crew showed up at dawn. That's how I ended up standing in my boxers at 6:47 a.m., screaming at a foreman while a loader idled on my property. After I threw Miguel's radio and threatened to call the sheriff, he made the smart choice. He shut down the equipment and backed it off my land. But the damage was done. Literally. The loader had already torn up about 40 feet of native grass, left deep tire ruts, and crushed a section of fence I'd rebuilt last summer. I called the sheriff's department. Dispatch said they'd send a deputy when one becomes available. I called my insurance company. They said this was a civil matter, not a claim. I called the county planning office. They said they hadn't issued any permits yet. So who authorized this? I spent the rest of that morning walking the property line, taking photos, documenting every bit of damage. Then I drove to FedEx, printed out 50 NO trespassing signs, and spent the afternoon posting them every 20 feet along the eastern boundary. When I got home, there was a certified letter waiting. Notice of legal action, dear Mr. The Sunset Ridge Estates HOA hereby provides notice of our intent to file suit to resolve boundary ambiguities related to parcel 181132BD00400. We have obtained preliminary legal opinions suggesting historical survey errors may have resulted in incorrect boundary demarcation. This matter will be resolved through the courts. We encourage you to seek legal representation. I read it 3 times. Then I did what any reasonable person would do. I hired a lawyer. His name was Marcus Webb. Mid-60s, silver hair, the kind of attorney who wears boots with his suit and drives a truck to court. His office was in downtown Bend, tucked above a brew pub with windows overlooking the Deschutes River. Anthony Castellano? He shook my hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. Sit. Tell me everything, I told him. The HOA's proposal, Linda's visits, the planning commission meeting, the construction crew showing up at dawn, the lawsuit threat. Marcus listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. They're bluffing. How do you know? Because boundary disputes require actual evidence of error. They don't have any. Your deed is clean. Your survey is clean. The county records confirm everything. They're hoping you'll panic and settle. So what do? 2 things. First, I file a motion to dismiss any lawsuit before it even gets traction. Second, I send them a cease and desist that makes it very clear any further trespassing, any further harassment, any further attempts to develop your land will result in criminal charges and a countersuit that'll make their insurance company weep. How much? $5,000 retainer. This won't be cheap if it goes to court, but honestly, I don't think it will. They're trying to intimidate you. Once they realize you've got competent representation, they'll fold. I wrote the check. Marcus drafted the paperwork that same day, but here's what I didn't know. Marcus Webb had a connection I wasn't aware of. His brother-in-law sat on the Sunset Ridge HOA board. Marcus didn't tell me this. He didn't think it mattered. It mattered. For 3 weeks, everything went quiet. No construction crews, no letters, no angry neighbors banging on my door. I started to think Marcus was right. They'd folded. Then I got a call from an unknown Oregon number. Mr. Castellano? This is Jenna Ortiz. I'm a freelance surveyor. I was contacted by your attorney, Marcus Webb, to review your property boundaries. I sat up. Yeah. When are you coming out? That's the thing. I'm calling because, well, I wanted to give you a heads up, Mr. Webb asked me to review the survey, but he also asked me to look for any potential discrepancies that might support a boundary dispute. My stomach dropped. He what? I thought you should know. I reviewed the county records and your 2008 survey. Everything's clean. There are no discrepancies, but Mr. Webb seemed disappointed when I told him that. Why would my own lawyer want to find problems with my property? Silence on the line. Then, I don't know, but I felt like you deserved to know what he asked for. I thanked her and hung up. Then I drove straight to Marcus's office. He wasn't there. His secretary said he was in meetings all day. I left a message. He didn't call back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. Why would my lawyer try to undermine my case? The answer came at 2 a.m. when I was scrolling through county commission minutes online, looking for anything related to Sunset Ridge. There it was, buried in a list of HOA board members. Stephen Webb, Treasurer, Sunset Ridge Estates HOA, Marcus's brother-in-law. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. My own attorney was working with the HOA, or at least he had a conflict of interest he'd never disclosed. The next morning, I fired Marcus Webb via email and demanded a full refund of my retainer. He responded within an hour, cool, professional, claiming there was no conflict and that his representation had been entirely ethical. I forwarded the entire email chain to the Oregon State Bar with a formal complaint. Then I found a new lawyer. Her name was Rachel Montoya. Late 30s, sharp as a blade, with a reputation for eating HOA boards for breakfast. She worked out of a small firm in Sisters, specializing in property rights and land use disputes. When I showed her everything, the deeds, the surveys, the letters, the photos of the damaged fence, the email from Jenna Ortiz, the connection between Marcus Webb and the HOA, she smiled like a wolf, spotting wounded prey. "Oh, this is good," she said. "This is really, really good." Good? They've been trying to steal my land for 3 months. Yes, and now we can prove it. Plus, we can add legal malpractice to the list. Marcus Webb's failure to disclose his conflict of interest is a state bar violation and grounds for a countersuit. How much is this going to cost me? Nothing. I'll take this on contingency. When we win, and we will win, I'll take 30% of whatever damages we recover. But Anthony, we're not just defending your property. We're going to bury them. I liked her immediately. Rachel moved fast. Within a week, she'd filed a motion to block any further HOA activity on my property, subpoenaed all HOA board meeting minutes and financial records, and sent a blistering cease and desist to Linda Frazier personally. The HOA responded with their own lawsuit claiming I was interfering with legitimate community development and demanding the court clarify the boundary dispute. Rachel laughed when she read it. They just handed us everything we need. How? Because now they have to produce evidence in court, under oath, and they don't have any. The court date was set for March 2025, 4 months away. 4 months of waiting, watching, and wondering what Linda Frazier would try next. I didn't have to wonder long. 2 weeks after Rachel filed our countersuit, things got ugly. It started with a dead deer. I found it at dawn, lying just inside my fence line on the eastern boundary. Shot. Not by a hunter, wrong season, wrong weapon. A. 22, through the skull, close range, execution style. I called the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. They came out, took photos, filed a report, but admitted there wasn't much they could do without witnesses. Probably just some asshole, the officer said. Maybe kids, maybe, but I didn't believe in coincidences. 3 days later, my truck's tires were slashed, all 4, in my own driveway. I'd been inside for maybe 2 hours, and when I came out to grab firewood, there they were. Clean cuts, professional job. Sheriff's deputy took a report. No cameras, no witnesses. No leads. You got enemies, Mr. Castellano? Just one, with about 40 members. The deputy nodded slowly. HOA thing? Yeah, can't say I'm surprised. Third property dispute we've had this year involving Sunset Ridge. They're aggressive. Aggressive is one word. A week after that, I woke up to find spray paint on my barn. Big red letters, share or lose it. This time I didn't call the sheriff. I installed cameras. 4 of them, wireless, solar-powered, motion-activated, covering every approach to the cabin and barn. Cost me $800, worth every penny. The footage started rolling in immediately. Cars slowing down on the road, people walking the fence line at dusk, someone in a hoodie standing at my gate at 2 a.m. just watching. I downloaded everything and sent it to Rachel. Her response: document everything. Don't engage. Let them keep digging. But it was hard not to engage when I found a Sunset Ridge HOA flyer stapled to my gate. Community notice. Property dispute update. Dear neighbors, the AOA board is working diligently to resolve a boundary dispute with an adjacent property owner who refuses to cooperate with community enhancement efforts. We remain committed to creating the park our families deserve. Your patience and support are appreciated. Linda Frazier, HOA president. They were spinning me as the villain. The selfish landowner hoarding space while families suffered. I ripped down the flyer and threw it in the trash, but the damage was spreading. I started getting dirty looks at the grocery store. Someone left a note on my windshield. Fuck you, land hog. The isolation was deliberate, calculated. They were trying to break me down before we ever got to court, but I'd fought wildfires for a decade. I knew how to stand in the heat. Then the real blow came. I got an email from Rachel. Subject line, we need to talk. Call me. I called immediately. What's wrong? Anthony, I just received discovery documents from the HOA's attorney. They're claiming they have historical evidence suggesting your boundary was incorrectly surveyed in 1972. My chest tightened. What kind of evidence? An old survey map from 1968, before your grandfather bought the land. It shows the parcel boundaries in a slightly different location about 40 feet east of where your current fence line sits. That's impossible. My grandfather's deed describes the boundary clearly, I know, and their map is questionable at best. But Anthony, they're going to argue that your grandfather bought land based on an incorrect survey, that the true boundary puts the East Meadow partially in what was originally BLM land, which was later incorporated into county management, which they're claiming gives them a legal argument for community use. That's insane. It's creative, and it's enough to make this case complicated. The judge is going to want to see everything: original surveys, historical records, expert testimony. This just got a lot more expensive and time-consuming. How much more expensive? If we go to trial, could be $50,000, $60,000 in legal fees, maybe more. I sat down. I don't have that kind of money. Then we need to find another way. I'm working on it. But Anthony, you need to prepare for the possibility that this gets worse before it gets better. I hung up and sat in silence, staring at the meadow through my window. The lupine was starting to bloom. Hawks circled overhead. Everything looked exactly as it should, except now it might not be mine. I did what I do best. When everything's burning, I got to work. First stop. The county archives. Old building downtown smells like mildew and forgotten bureaucracy, staffed by a woman in her 70s who looked like she'd been there since statehood. I need everything you have on parcel 18113-2B D00400, I said. Original surveys, boundary descriptions, historical maps, anything from 1968 to 1972. She disappeared into the stacks for 30 minutes. Came back with a banker's box full of documents. I spread them out on a table and started digging. There it was, the 1968 survey the HOA was referencing. But when I looked closer, I found something interesting. The survey was marked preliminary, not for recording. It wasn't an official boundary determination. It was a preliminary sketch done before the final plat was recorded. And the final plat, the one recorded when my grandfather bought the land in 1972, showed the boundary exactly where I'd always known it to be. I photocopied everything. Then I found something even better. Buried in the deed documents was a handwritten note from the original surveyor dated October 1971, corrected eastern boundary per BLM clarification. Previous sketch, 1968, contained error in chain measurement. Final boundary confirmed 40 feet west of preliminary. J. Morrison, licensed surveyor. The HOA's evidence was a preliminary survey that had been corrected before my grandfather ever bought the land. It wasn't proof of anything except that someone in the HOA's legal team either didn't know how to read survey documents or was deliberately trying to deceive the court. I called Rachel immediately. I found it. Proof their map is bullshit. Send me everything. I'll file a motion to strike their evidence and request sanctions for submitting fraudulent documents. While I was at the archives, I also requested records on Sunset Ridge Estates, its self-incorporation documents, development permits, HOA formation papers. Something was nagging at me, and I wanted to understand the full picture. What I found was interesting. Sunset Ridge was developed by a company called Summit Ridge Development LLC. The principal owner, Richard Frazier, Linda Frazier's husband, the same Linda Frazier who'd been pushing so hard for the park. The same Linda whose husband stood to benefit significantly if property values in Sunset Ridge went up, which they would if the development suddenly had access to a beautiful meadow park. This wasn't about community benefit. This was about profit. I documented everything and sent it to Rachel. Her response came back in minutes. Holy shit. This changes everything. Next, I reached out to the surveyor who'd written that 1971 note, J. Morrison. Long shot, given it was 50 plus years ago, but I found an obituary. James Morrison, deceased 2019, but his son, Peter Morrison, was still practicing as a surveyor in Bend. I called him, Mr. Morrison. My name is Anthony Castellano. I'm dealing with a boundary dispute involving land your father surveyed in 1971. Would you be willing to look at the documents and provide expert testimony? Peter Morrison had the same measured, careful voice his father probably had. Send me what you've got. If my father's work is being challenged, I want to see why. I sent him everything. 3 days later, he called back. Mr. Castellano, I've reviewed the documents. The 1968 map the HOA is using is exactly what my father's note says, a preliminary sketch with a measurement error. He corrected it before the final survey. Your boundary is exactly where it should be, and if you need me to testify to that, I'll do it, pro bono. My father's reputation matters. I could have cried. Instead, I said, thank you. The pieces were falling into place. Bad attorney. Fraudulent evidence, financial conflict of interest. I had everything I needed to win. But Linda Frazier wasn't done fighting. The harassment escalated. Someone cut my water line. Took me 3 days to find the break-buried pipe. Clean cut, deliberate sabotage. Repair cost, $2,400. My mailbox was knocked over twice in 1 week. The second time, they used a truck tire tracks in the dirt. Mailbox post bent like a pretzel. I got a citation from the county for improper land use. Someone had filed a complaint claiming I was running an illegal junkyard. I had to request an inspection to prove I wasn't. The inspector apologized. "Someone's clearly got it out for you," he said. "No shit." Then came the social media campaign. Someone created a Facebook group, Sunset Ridge Community Rights. The description: fighting for our right to community spaces against selfish landowners. My name was never mentioned directly, but everyone knew. Photos of my property appeared with captions like, "This could be a park for our children, and one man's greed versus community needs." The comments were vicious. Calls to boycott my business? I didn't have a business. Suggestions that the county force me to sell. One person even suggested arson. Maybe a fire would change his mind. I screenshot everything and forwarded it to Rachel and the sheriff's department. Rachel filed for a restraining order against Linda Frazier and the HOA board, citing harassment, property damage, and threats. The court granted a temporary order. Linda and her board members were prohibited from coming within 500 feet of my property pending a full hearing. But here's what I learned about restraining orders. They're just paper. They don't stop someone determined to hurt you. They just create consequences after the fact. The night after the restraining order was served, someone tried to burn down my barn. I woke to the smell of smoke at 3 a.m. Stumbled outside in my boxers to find flames licking up the side of the barn near the back corner where I stored hay and equipment. I grabbed the hose, cranked it full blast, and fought the fire for 20 minutes before it was out. The cameras caught everything. A figure in dark clothes, face covered, pouring accelerant along the barn wall, lighting it with a road flare, running back to a vehicle parked on the road, white SUV, no plates visible. I called 911. Fire department arrived, confirmed it was arson, called in the sheriff's arson investigator. By dawn, my barn was a smoke-stained mess, and I was giving a statement to detectives. "Mr. Castellano, do you have any idea who might want to harm you?" I laughed. It wasn't funny, but I laughed anyway. "Yeah, about 40 people in Sunset Ridge Estates." The detective nodded. The HOA thing, they took copies of the camera footage, promised to investigate. But we all knew how this would go. No plates, no face, no evidence linking it directly to anyone. Just another crime on my property that would go unsolved. Except this time, I'd had enough. I called Rachel. I want to accelerate the court date. I want to depose Linda Frazier. I want to drag every HOA board member into that courtroom and make them answer under oath for every bit of harassment, property damage, and intimidation they've thrown at me. And I want them to pay. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, "You sure? Going aggressive could backfire." "I'm sure. They tried to burn down my barn. I could have died. This stops now." "Okay, I'll file a motion to expedite and request full depositions. But Anthony, this is going to get ugly. They're going to fight back hard. Let them. I've got cameras, documents, witnesses, and a dead barn. They've got lies and a community Facebook group. I like my odds." 2 weeks later, depositions began. The conference room at Rachel's law office smelled like coffee and impending doom. Linda Frazier sat across from us in a navy pantsuit, her lawyer, a slick guy named Todd Brennan, beside her. A court reporter sat up in the corner, fingers ready on the stenography machine. Rachel started gentle. Name, address, role in the HOA, how long she'd been president. Then she moved in for the kill. "Miss Frazier, when did you first become aware of Mr. Castellano's property?" "When we broke ground on Sunset Ridge. It's adjacent to our development." "And when did you first approach him about using his land?" "November 2023. We wanted to discuss partnership opportunities." "Partnership or appropriation?" Todd objected. "Argumentative." Rachel smiled. "I'll rephrase. Did Mr. Castellano ever agree to let you use his land?" "No. He was uncooperative." "Uncooperative? Or exercising his legal right to refuse?" Linda's jaw tightened. "He refused to even consider the community benefit. Miss Fraser, did you authorize construction equipment to enter Mr. Castellano's property in December 2024? We were conducting preliminary site assessment. Without his permission? We believed we had the right under community development provisions, which don't exist. Miss Fraser, did you or did you not authorize trespassing on private property? Silence. Linda glanced at Todd. He whispered something. She looked back at Rachel. I authorized site assessment, based on legal advice that the boundary was disputed. From Marcus Webb? Her eyes widened slightly. I don't recall. Marcus Webb, whose brother-in-law sits on your HOA board? Aye, yes, we consulted with Mr. Webb. Did Mr. Webb tell you he was simultaneously representing Mr. Castellano? Todd jumped in. Objection. Attorney-client privilege. Not when there's fraud involved, Rachel said smoothly. Miss Fraser, were you aware that Mr. Webb had a conflict of interest? No. Were you aware that Mr. Webb was asking surveyors to find problems with Mr. Castellano's boundary, even though no problems existed? No. Were you aware that the 1,968 survey your attorney submitted as evidence was marked preliminary and had been superseded by a corrected survey in 1,971? Linda's face went pale. I trusted our legal team. So you submitted fraudulent evidence to the court without checking it? It wasn't fraudulent. It was a preliminary survey marked as not for recording. It had been corrected before Mr. Castellano's grandfather even purchased the land. You submitted it to the court as if it was legitimate evidence of a boundary error. That's fraud, Miss Fraser. Todd stood up. This deposition is over. We're not answering any more questions about legal strategy. Then we'll ask about the harassment. Rachel pulled out a folder. Miss Fraser, did you create or approve the Facebook group Sunset Ridge Community Rights? That was created by concerned residents. Residents you encouraged. Did you or did you not post in that group about Mr. Castellano's refusal to cooperate? Silence. Did you or did you not suggest that community pressure might change his mind? I suggested that concerned citizens have a right to advocate. Did you or did you not know about incidents of property damage targeting Mr. Castellano's land? I heard rumors. Did you report those rumors to law enforcement? No. Did you in fact celebrate those incidents as evidence that the community supported your position? Todd tried to object again, but Linda was already answering. I may have expressed frustration that one person was standing in the way of progress. Progress? Miss Fraser, someone tried to burn down Mr. Castellano's barn. Do you consider that progress? Her face went from pale to red. I had nothing to do with that, but you created the environment where someone thought it was acceptable. You painted him as the enemy. You told your community that he was stealing from them. You encouraged harassment and intimidation. And when violence occurred, you didn't report it or condemn it. You remained silent. Linda's hands were shaking. I never told anyone to commit crimes. You just created the conditions where crimes became inevitable. Rachel closed her folder. No further questions. The deposition ended. Linda walked out looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Todd followed, muttering about counterclaims and defamation. Rachel looked at me. That's how it's done. We deposed 3 more HOA board members over the next week. Same pattern. Each one claimed they were just supporting community values. Each one admitted they'd never verified the boundary evidence. Each one squirmed when asked about the harassment and property damage. By the time we were done, Rachel had built an airtight case. Fraudulent evidence, conspiracy to trespass, harassment, property damage, and a pattern of intimidation that would make any judge furious. The court date was set for April 15th, 2025. 2 weeks away. I spent those 2 weeks preparing the property, fixed the barn, replaced the fence, installed more cameras. I wasn't going to let them destroy anything else. And then, 3 days before the hearing, something unexpected happened. I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a man's voice said, "Mr. Castellano, my name is David Chen. I'm a member of the Sunset Ridge HOA board. Can we meet?" "I'm not talking to any board members without my attorney." "I understand, but please, hear me out. I'm not calling as a board member. I'm calling as someone who disagrees with everything Linda's done. I have information you need to see." I met him the next day at a coffee shop in Bend. David was mid-40s, wearing a software company t-shirt and looking nervous as hell. "I voted against the park project from the beginning," he said. "I told them this was a bad idea, that you had legal rights they couldn't just ignore. But Linda? She pushed it through anyway. She convinced the board that you'd eventually give in. Why are you telling me this?" He slid a folder across the table. "Because I can't stand watching someone's life get destroyed over a power trip. This is everything. Internal emails, financial records showing how much Linda's husband stands to profit if property values go up, meeting minutes where they discussed strategies to motivate you to sell." I opened the folder. It was devastating. Emails where Linda called me the obstacle and suggested creative pressure tactics. Financial projections showing Summit Ridge development stood to make millions if Sunset Ridge became more desirable. Meeting minutes where the board discussed planting negative stories about me in local media. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because it's wrong. I moved to Sunset Ridge for community, not corruption. Linda's turned this into something ugly. I want it to stop." I took the folder. "Thank you. One more thing," David said. "Linda's planning something for the court hearing. I don't know what. But she's been talking about making a statement and showing the community's resolve. Be careful." I called Rachel immediately and sent her everything David had given me. Her response? "This is a smoking gun. We just went from winning to absolutely destroying them." The court hearing was 2 days away. I spent those days going over everything one more time, making sure every document was in order, every piece of evidence logged and ready. I also spent time in the meadow, walking through the grass, watching the hawks, remembering why this mattered. Not because I wanted to fight, but because some things you don't surrender. Not to HOAs, not to bullies, not to anyone. The courtroom was packed. Sunset Ridge residents filled the gallery, many wearing those same Community First shirts. Linda sat at the plaintiff's table with Todd Brennan, looking calm and confident like she'd already won. Rachel and I sat across from them. She'd brought 2 bankers, boxes full of evidence. I'd brought my grandfather's deed in a frame. Judge Margaret Delacroix entered, stern woman in her 60s, with the kind of face that suggests she's heard every lie in the book and isn't interested in hearing more. She called the case. Sunset Ridge Estates, HOA versus Anthony Castellano, boundary dispute and property rights. Todd stood first. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. Historical survey evidence suggests the boundary between Mr. Castellano's property and community-adjacent land is ambiguous. We're simply asking the court to clarify that boundary and allow community development to proceed in accordance with local planning guidelines." Judge Delacroix looked unimpressed. "Counselor, preliminary reviews suggest your historical evidence was a preliminary survey that was corrected before the property was ever purchased. Care to explain?" Todd faltered. "Your Honor, we believe the preliminary survey reflects the true intent." "Intent is irrelevant. The recorded survey is what matters. Do you have any actual evidence of a boundary error?" "We have expert testimony suggesting. I've read your expert's report. He's a historian, not a surveyor. Miss Montoya, your response?" Rachel stood. "Your Honor, the defendant has clear title to 22 acres as recorded in 1972 and confirmed by multiple surveys, including a recent assessment by Peter Morrison, son of the original surveyor. The plaintiff has submitted fraudulent evidence, trespassed repeatedly, and engaged in a campaign of harassment and property damage. We're asking the court to dismiss their claim, issue a permanent injunction, and award damages." Judge Delacroix raised an eyebrow. "Fraudulent evidence is a strong accusation, which I can prove." Rachel pulled out the 1,971 surveyor's note. This document, written by James Morrison and filed with the county, explicitly states that the 1968 survey contained a measurement error that was corrected. The plaintiff knew this and submitted the incorrect survey anyway. The judge read the document. Her expression darkened. "Mr. Brennan, did you knowingly submit incorrect documents to this court?" Todd looked like he wanted to disappear. "Your Honor, we relied on information provided by the HOA board." "That's not an answer. Did you verify this evidence before filing?" We trusted our client's research. Counsel, that's a yes or no question. Silence." Judge Delacroix turned to Linda. "Miss Fraser, did you personally review the survey evidence before your attorney submitted it?" Linda stood slowly. "Your Honor, I relied on our legal team's guidance. Answer the question. Did you review it?" I saw the maps. Yes. Did you see the notation marking it as preliminary?" Linda's face went pale. Yes. But I was told, who told you it was acceptable to submit preliminary evidence as if it was final? Silence. The judge looked disgusted. "Miss Montoya, I'm ready to hear your damages claim." Rachel stood again. "Your Honor, Mr. Castellano has suffered significant harm. Property damage, including fence destruction, waterline sabotage, and attempted arson of his barn. Legal fees exceeding $40,000. Lost work due to dealing with this harassment. And severe emotional distress. We're seeking full reimbursement plus punitive damages." She laid out the evidence, photos of the damaged property, video of the construction crew trespassing, footage of Linda herself cutting down my signs, the Facebook group posts, the internal HOA emails David Chen had provided. The courtroom was silent. Even the Sunset Ridge residents looked uncomfortable. Judge Delacroix reviewed everything. Then she looked at Linda with the kind of expression that makes grown adults reconsider their life choices. "Miss Fraser, in my 20 years on the bench, I've seen many property disputes, but I have rarely seen such a blatant abuse of power and disregard for the law. You attempted to steal a man's land through intimidation and fraud. You submitted false evidence to this court. You encouraged harassment that led to property damage and potentially life-threatening violence." Linda tried to speak. The judge held up a hand. "I'm not finished. The HOA's claim is dismissed with prejudice. The boundary is exactly where Mr. Incedent Castellano says it is, as confirmed by 50 years of county records. Furthermore, I'm issuing a permanent injunction prohibiting you, your HOA, and any associated parties from entering, surveying, or discussing Mr. Castellano's property in any capacity." She paused. "As for damages, I'm awarding Mr. Castellano full reimbursement of legal fees, property repairs, and lost wages. Additionally, I'm awarding $500,000 in punitive damages to deter similar conduct in the future." The courtroom erupted. Sunset Ridge residents shouting, Linda looking like she might pass out, Todd frantically taking notes. Judge Delacroix banged her gavel. "Order!" "Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges, including fraud, conspiracy, and criminal trespass." "Miss Fraser, you're lucky you're not being arrested in this courtroom." She stood. "This case is closed. And Miss Fraser, if I ever see you in my courtroom again, you won't leave as easily." The judge left. The courtroom remained in chaos. Rachel turned to me, smiling. "We won. Complete victory." I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted, relieved, and angry that it had taken this much to defend what was always mine. As we walked out, Linda Fraser caught my eye across the courtroom. No smile, no smug confidence. Just the hollow look of someone whose kingdom had just burned to the ground. Outside, the sun was bright and warm. Rachel shook my hand. "You did good, Anthony. Most people would have folded months ago." "Most people haven't fought wildfires," I said. She laughed. "No, I guess they haven't." I drove home. past Sunset Ridge, where the houses sat silent and the park signs had already been taken down, past the county line where the high desert opened up and the sage smell hit you like freedom. When I got to my property, I parked and just sat there for a moment, looking at the meadow, the barn, the cabin my grandfather built, all of it still mine, still whole. I got out and walked to the meadow's edge. The lupine was in full bloom now, purple and blue as far as I could see. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. I stood there for a long time, not celebrating, not gloating, just breathing. Some battles you fight because you have to, because surrendering isn't an option. Because some things land, memory, principle are worth defending no matter the cost. I'd won, but more than that, I'd protected something that mattered. And in a world where everyone wants to take what isn't theirs, that felt like enough. Epilogue. 6 months later. The lupine has faded to seed pods now, rattling in the autumn wind. The meadow's gone golden brown, that high desert color that comes right before the first snow. I'm sitting on my porch with coffee, watching the sun come up over the Cascades. Same view I've had for years. Same peace my grandfather found here 50 years ago. The settlement money came through. After Rachel's fees and repairs, I banked most of it, used some to hire a property management company to maintain the meadow-controlled burns, invasive species removal, habitat restoration. That land's going to stay wild forever. Linda Frazier resigned from the HOA 2 weeks after the verdict. Rumor is she and her husband moved to Arizona. Summit Ridge Development LLC quietly dissolved. The rest of the HOA board got replaced by residents who actually understand the word community doesn't mean what we take from others. Marcus Webb lost his law license. 6-month suspension, formal reprimand, mandatory ethics training. He's appealing, but nobody thinks he'll practice in Oregon again. David Chen, the whistleblower, got elected to the new HOA board. First thing he did was pass a resolution, formally apologizing to me and establishing new rules requiring legal review before any property actions. I sent him a thank you note. The best part came 3 weeks ago. A truck pulled up my driveway, young couple, maybe 30, with a toddler in the back seat. They knocked on my door looking nervous. "Mr. Castellano? We're the Hendersons." We just bought a house in Sunset Ridge. We heard what happened, and we wanted to say thank you. For what? For standing up to them. We almost didn't buy because of the HOA drama, but when we heard how it ended, that someone actually won against that kind of bullying, it gave us hope that maybe it could be a real community again. The husband held out his hand. "We're not all like Linda. Most of us just want to live in peace." I shook his hand. "That's all I ever wanted, too. They invited me to a neighborhood barbecue. I politely declined. I'm not a subdivision kind of guy, but it was nice to be asked. Sometimes I still get mail from other people fighting HOA battles, letters from across the country, asking for advice, sharing their stories. I answer when I can. Tell them what Rachel taught me. Document everything, know your rights, and never assume authority means power. Yesterday, I walked the entire property boundary, all 22 acres. Took 3 hours. The fence is solid now. Signs are clear, cameras are working, everything's exactly how it should be. And when I got to the meadow, I found fresh deer tracks in the mud near the creek. A whole family, by the looks of it. They're bedding down in the tall grass again, like they did before any of this started. That's when I knew it was really over. When the land felt like it belonged to itself again, not to courts or HOAs or human drama. Just land. Wild and free. The way it's supposed to be. The end.